How's it going? I'm Ryan, and today I'm going to go over the two trades I took on NQ. Took a small loss in the morning trying to long near high a day. It was kind of ill-advised. We'll go into why that didn't work. And took a long position later in the day for a nice win to bring us positive overall. So small losses, big wins is what we're shooting for. With the volatility in today's market, we are gunning for bigger moves, right? So looking for 60, 70, 80 points. And that's going to come with some bigger losses. So we'll go over the two trades I took. Let's just look at what I was watching coming into the day. So I'll pull up the hourly chart. How I start my morning is I'm looking at an hourly chart. I'm looking at just general market structure just to give me an idea of where we are, where I might find an opportunity. So one thing I noticed is that yesterday, big sell-off, right? We had a few attempted bounces, I'll call it, right? We have like an attempt here to bounce. We set a lower high here. You know, we have a lower high here, a lower high here, a lower low here. But one thing I watched is we put in this lower low in the after hours, and then in the after hours in the pre-market session, we moved up. And what did we get? We got a high over here, and this is market open, so we'll ignore that. So coming into the day, I was looking that we had set a higher high than this swing high that we had put into place yesterday evening. So what I'm watching is obviously the overall trend has been down. We've been making lower highs, lower lows. But when we get a setup like this where we have a lower low and then we break this most recent attempt to push higher, and then we're pulling back, I guess market was, this is kind of where market was. So what I'm looking for is, do we break this swing high? Do we start making a change in market structure? Do we start making higher highs, higher lows? Or do we break down? Do we set a new low? At which case, we're looking to short. So coming into the day, I am looking at, and this might be a little noisy, especially if you're not familiar with the volume profile, so bear with me. I'll go over kind of what I was watching and why. But what I'm looking at here is we have yesterday's session, we have the overnight pre-market session, then we open up. Our value area from yesterday to the overnight session is shifted down, but not all that much. And what I'm watching is these high volume nodes. So areas where there's a lot of volume, such as, we have one right here. We have, and that kind of encompasses one from yesterday, or excuse me, the overnight session. We have one around yesterday's, overnight session. What am I trying to say? Value area high. This kind of coincides. If we extend that out, you can kind of see that kind of captured this little spike. But we have a lot of volume, especially around yesterday's point of control. That makes sense. That's what the point of control is. It's the area where the most volume happened. And then yesterday's value area low, we have a lot of volume in here. And that kind of coincides with the overnight point of control. That makes sense. So basically what I was watching is I'm going to let price play out a little bit. And I want to see generally, do we show strength to the upside? Do we show weakness to the downside? If we're showing strength to the upside, do we shift market structure, right? We have these pre-market highs nice and clear here that overlap with that value area high. So if we get that break above, then I'm looking for a retest and continuation to the upside. If we break down pretty seriously, what I'm watching is, do we break yesterday's low? And if we do that, do we break this most recent and lowest swing low from the overnight session? And this is just to kind of gauge where I want to place a trade. So my first trade idea, and I didn't take it because it was pretty early in the session. I usually try to wait a few minutes to let the market kind of give me an idea of what it wants to do. But one thing that I was watching is we have this value area low of yesterday. That's around 440 or so, we'll call it 430, 440. And we have this high volume node here. Now, if we look at how price action responded in this area in the overnight session, we can see that we got some price movement in here, kind of broke down, retested, and sold off. came up, retested this area and chopped around a little bit before it broke above. It rejected the top of this zone, came down, kind of held towards the bottom of this zone. And this isn't exact, nothing's ever exact, but this is what we're looking at. Reject, kind of false breakouts, pull back, hold the bottom of the zone before we finally move higher. So when we opened up, and I'll zoom in, and also I should say that a general idea, and this isn't something that's 100% accurate, but something that you can use as a template, is value area highs are going to be seen as resistance. That's kind of like overpriced. You could almost see it as like, and it's not the same, but you could see it as like the RSI, the RSI being high, that gives an indication that maybe it's overbought. And then the value area low is kind of seen as cheap or like a good price. You would see that as support. So what did we have? We had yesterday's value area low here, and we had overnight value area low here. So we had two value area lows. This indicates that, there might be some support, some buying in this area. And then we have this high volume node as well. As we pulled down, we held it right off the open. So we held that area right off the open, and then we started to hold. I considered longing it and then targeting kind of like this swing high here, about like 530. The next 5-minute candle ripped. So at this point, I was kind of thinking more of a long bias. I was understanding that there's potentially we break this pre-market high and we get continuation to the upside. We've had a pretty serious sell-off, so some sort of relief bounce wouldn't surprise me at this point. The reason why I'm getting into this is what I was looking for is I was looking for a break and confirmation above pre-market high, and then I wanted to see us pull back into this high volume node that was acting as resistance. I wanted to see us pull back into this area and hold it and then get continuation to the upside. And what would I target? I was targeting kind of this swing high, or that was the idea, right? Well, we had a news candle happen, so we got the break above, but then we didn't hold price. Then we came back up and we had news print. And when we got news, we set a new high on the day and we broke higher. And then as we came down to retest, I entered a long position here. And the reason why this wasn't a good trade is because I didn't wait for any sort of confirmation, and we didn't really have a super strong breakout above these levels. Additionally, what we have is twofold. We have the value area high from overnight and pre-market. That's going to be a strong level of resistance when we're underneath it. And then we have yesterday's point of control, which is a very strong kind of magnet for price because it's so much volume transacted there. So for price to push above that, it has to be a really strong move. So ideally what I would have waited for is price to close above that like 600 level. And you can see right where we wicked off here, right off yesterday's point of control. So what would have been a better game plan is to wait for price to close strongly above both of these levels and then pull back and hold it and get some sort of confirmation. I entered too early. I was entering based off the 1-minute chart. And funny enough, the move that I was trying to capture here actually happened later in the session. You can see once we did get that convincing break above both yesterday's point of control and pre-market high, then we came back, we pulled back into this area here, and we ran for over 100 points. So that's kind of the move that I was looking for. Now we're kind of chopping around in here. We kind of failed to hold it. We're retesting the top of this zone. I wouldn't be surprised to see us reject up in here and make our way back down, possibly towards this point of control here. That'd be my most likely target if we fail to break above here. So just a little bit of a live kind of explanation of what I was looking for. But like I said, I didn't get the full confirmation, so it was foolish of me to enter a long position there. And this was a totally avoidable loss that I took in the morning. I'll pull up the 1 minute though, and we'll just look at what I was watching. So what I was watching is we had this news candle at 10, we had high volume, we had a nice bullish candle, and then we set a new high, and we were pulling back into this area, and I entered long. And I was watching the 1 minute. I should have waited for 5-minute confirmation. This was FOMO, 100%. It was me just wanting to not miss the move. I was thinking, because I had watched us run from, about 400 up to 540, and I was kind of calling this move that I think if we hold in this area that we could see a move up into here. And funny enough, look where we stopped, right? This volume node. So I missed that move right off the open, and I think I had FOMO, which caused me to enter before I had confirmation here. Long explanation, but I just want to go in depth on that. And then also you can just see that my idea, had I been patient and waited for a setup more like this, it would have worked. You know, if you, I'd be happy capturing a 100-point move, 60, 70, 80, 90 points, whatever it may be. But that bounce alone is pretty significant. Here you see us rejecting that top of that zone. It's just really interesting to watch, man, as I watch these volume nodes, how accurate they can be. With that being said, let's get into the winning trade. So at this point, we sold off pretty seriously. I was pretty patient. I knew that I had entered this trade too early. My stop loss was based below kind of this volume node that we had here. I just put it like down here once that volume started to drop off, because I knew that if we had moved into this zone, most likely we're going to pull back further, right? Target maybe this point of control or something. So there's about a 34 point stop loss. Not terrible, especially when we're shooting for, you know, a 100-point move. So we did pull back. We came down and we started to hang out down here. And where does this line up? Well, I was looking at yesterday's price action. I'm just gonna pull up this 5-minute in full screen so we can be a little bit more clear here, so things aren't so muddied. But I was watching yesterday's price action and how we had yesterday's low down here, and there isn't a high volume node to associate with it. You know, we kind of have a little volume spike here, and then in the pre-market after hour session, we have a little bit of volume above it and a little bit of volume below it, but right at this level, not a ton. But what we do have is a violent reaction to the upside off of this level yesterday. And then we can likewise see in the pre-market, or in the after hours, excuse me, we held this temporarily, got a little bounce, saw it as resistance once we were below it. Then once we broke back above it, we got a nice run to the upside. So not that I was immediately going to long when we got into this area, but one thing that I was watching is that when we got down in that area, this selling pressure kind of died off, right? We held it once, we held it twice, we held it 3 times. And after we held it 3 times, on the 4th time, I entered long. Additionally, I like to watch this 5-minute point of control here. If I pull this up, what I was watching is that you see, for instance, on these candles that are selling off, you see those points of control kind of right in the middle of the candle, still indicating quite a lot of bearish momentum. But once we see us come down and test this area that we saw a large move to the upside off of in yesterday's session, we see those points of control shift lower, and we see it shift down, and price cannot close below this point, right? We see volume pick up on the 1 minute as we get down there. We see those points of control drop to the bottom of those candles, and we see price start to move up off that area. And so what kind of sold me, and I actually tried to enter after this candle. I tried to enter on this candle. It was a little bit buggy, so I got kind of a not as good of an entry as I would have liked. I probably would have entered about 30 points lower had I got what I wanted. But after this, what sold me is that we were holding that level. We had the points of control agreeing on the 5-minute, and then we had made an attempt higher and then held a higher low here. So we kind of made a low, a little bit of a lower low, made a move higher, held a higher low, and started to move off that. So just kind of watching everything. I entered long, like I said, I tried to enter long on this candle. It ended up being on this candle. The reason being is my trade of 8 was a minute behind. I've been having an odd thing where my trade of 8 is 1 minute behind actual time. So as we were on this candle, I was only seeing here. So I tried to enter long here, but we had already printed this candle, which caused me to enter on the following, if that makes sense. I was trying to enter down here, entered up here. Still worked out. Where did I place my stop? I placed my stop at, it was about 60 points. So I had 30, my stop was like 70, somewhere down here. And that was basically just like low a day. If we came back down and tested again and didn't get some sort of move out of here, then it would have invalidated my trade. And you can see that I actually took profit pretty much right at this peak before we pulled back. It was 75 points for about $745 profit with 5 contracts. How did I determine my take profit? Once again, I'm using volume. So what I'm looking at is this high volume node from yesterday. And the reason why I'm using volume is because liquidity moves the market. Market moves from areas of high liquidity to high liquidity. If there's low volume, it's going to move through that area, and I don't expect that area to act as support or resistance, right? I don't expect much impact on price in those areas. I expect price to move from areas of liquidity to liquidity because that's what controls the market. That's what moves the market. But what I was watching is this right here. We had this high volume node. We don't have a lot of volume below it on the overnight session or yesterday's session. So as we held down here, figured where's the most likely target that price is going to move to if it moves to the upside? Well, it's going to target this area of high liquidity up here. And you can see if I pull this up, also, it aligns with price action, right? It's an area that we saw resistance and support, and then put my take profit right there. Price moved up, touched the very bottom of that, rejected, eventually kind of tested the upper limits of that before kind of chopping around. But yeah, that was the second trade. Ended up working really well. If I had just avoided this first trade and taken this one, we would have had a much bigger day on the profits. But we're up about 400, up $1,000 in 2 days on both my accounts. So I'm trading two 50K accounts. We're up about 1,000 on both of them. So sitting pretty, looking pretty good. And then since we're doing this live, I just want to point this out. We had this. Oh boy, this is gonna be a mess, isn't it? We have this volume node in here, and I mentioned that we were rejecting this area, right? And I said, if we can't hold it, what's it gonna do? It's probably gonna pull back to that point of control. When you see us testing the upper bounds of that, what are we doing? We're pulling back, and here comes the point of control. It's almost guaranteed at this point, but basically just looking at liquidity, looking at volume and price action, and really trying to make things work here. We're shooting for large wins. We're shooting for holding 5 contracts. I want to be making 6, 7, 800, 1,000 potentially. If I could capture 100-point move with 5 contracts, I'd feel pretty good. There's something different this week. I think that my past failures have numbed me a little bit, and I don't mean that in a bad way or like some sort of egotistical way, but taking losses and blowing accounts, you get used to the pain, and I'm not saying that you should get used to the pain and blow accounts. Absolutely not. You should use proper risk management. But taking a $400 loss in the morning didn't wreck me, right? It didn't discourage me from taking this trade here and setting a 60-point stop loss. I could have blown $1,000 today, easy. But I felt strongly in this setup, and I felt that I put on appropriate risk for what would invalidate my trade. And I knew that there was potential for it to move pretty aggressively to the upside if it did what I thought it was going to do. So with the volatility in the current market conditions, I would recommend sizing down if you're going to be trading with a 40, 50-point stop or whatever it may be. And I'm not even necessarily taking my own advice. I'm trading with 5 contracts. I'm trying to guap out. If I'm being honest, blowing an account and thinking about having to hit that $3,000 threshold to go to a PA account and then hit that $2,600 threshold to be able to qualify for a payout. My goal is to make money. My goal is to pull money out of these markets, and I don't want to be impatient, but I also want to understand that we have the opportunity here to capitalize on some really big moves. When we're moving hundreds of points in minutes, it would be foolish of me to try to scalp 20 points, and not foolish. There's people who are successful with that. I don't want to talk down on that method of trading, but for my own understanding, I was watching myself take profit at 30 points and then price run another 100 after that. And knowing that I am going to take losses no matter what strategy you have. So I might as well look for wins that are outsizing my losses to a significant amount. And that's what we're trying to do. So long-winded video today. I see we're about 20 minutes. I also just want to say I didn't quite get to that point of control, but it was pretty close. But if you look at where it did pull back to, I've been using these boxes a lot. we have a high volume node right here and just touch the top of it. So I'm not using these levels as, they're not gospel, right? They're not 100% accurate. I'm not using these levels as my targets necessarily. What I'm using is these volume nodes. So if I was in a trade here, I would certainly look at how price reacts to the upper limit of this volume node. Similarly over here, right? I could have tried to hold for that value area low, but we didn't make it to that point until later. But what we did do is we came up and tested the kind of the bottom extremity of this volume node. So we're trying to put it all together, and I'm only hoping to grow and get better from my previous mistakes, my previous losses. I want this to work. I want to keep going. I want to keep following what I'm trying to do and just keep improving and adjusting. Still trading the same kind of style, but as I learn more, things are going to adjust and tweak, and I think that's just the growth of anybody who's in this for a while and learns from their mistakes, and hopefully I am. That's all I got. I've been really enjoying trading based off of volume, and I should say volume profiles. I use volume over time as well, but volume over price has been very instrumental in how I've been trading. So I appreciate you watching. Thank you very much. I trade live Monday through Friday on this account, so if you want to stop by, say what up, please do. I hope you have a great day. Peace.